make the children aware of your expectations when you're otherwise occupied with one student or a group of students and other kids are coaching one another. They need to be trustworthy, and you need to be able to trust them to carry out, what's appropriate and to behave in an appropriate manner. So I think one of the ways to avoid some of the pitfalls of peer tutoring or peer coaching is to lay down the law at the beginning of the year and enforce it and first of all, model good peer coaching and skills, these kinds of skills. But I think probably when you first start using peer coaching, you need to free yourself up. The teacher needs to free himself or herself up to monitor and to figure out what's appropriate, what's inappropriate, to redirect students, to call it quits when a group's out of hand or something inappropriate is occurring. And you really need to spend the first several weeks patrolling and letting the kids know what is acceptable and what's not. They're going to test those boundaries. That's appropriate. That's what children do. So you set those strict boundaries and you keep them inside. And then after they are tired of butting their heads up against a wall, then they will behave appropriately. You've set the expectations, and then it should be fine in most cases. But there definitely need to be expectations. Those expectations need to be monitored, and consequences need to be enforced if inappropriate things are going on. So.
Great. That's some good concrete feedback for the caveat for teachers. But let's jump next to kind of rocket runs and energy points.
Okay.
I understand you're the inventor of the rocket runs. So let's talk a little bit about energy points, how you use them, and how you use rocket runs in your classroom.
Energy points, for the most part, I don't use energy points. I don't draw attention to energy points. My students are very motivated. Many of my students buy energy points. They love energy points. They're excited about energy points. They're comparing energy points. And they're very, very important, but there's no real value in my class attached to energy points. I think it's some kind of intrinsic thing, whether it's, it makes it more like a video game, gives it a video game vibe or something like that. I don't know the reason, but the kids love the energy points. I downplay the energy points, or just don't even really address it for the most part, or deal with energy points, because I kind of have an issue with these students. Junior high students want to get ahead, and they want to take the path of least resistance. So one of the things we found early on was my students were so consumed with energy points, they wanted to earn them at all costs, even if that included cheating on the modules by using calculators or things like that. And so, and I wasn't emphasizing energy points at all at the time, but they were so focused and so overwhelmed with it that this led to some very negative behaviors. And so, so I de-emphasize energy points. The kids still really like them. I don't really address them as a good thing or a bad thing or anything like that. They're not attached to any kind of grades in my class or any kind of status in my class. I know some of them will compare energy points from time to time, but I don't really have much control over that. The one time we do use energy points is during the rocket runs. And that is when we participate in a whole class competition where the entire class uses the energy points per minute graph that I have on my account. And we shine that on the LCD projector on the screen. And we work on, together, everybody on their own computer, a particular module, such as multiplication 0.5 or 1, or something where it's appropriate to move fast, where you can work on those math facts. So the objective of a rocket run is to really work on mental math skills and to provide an avenue for some friendly competition. And so I set up competitions between my 3rd period and 7th period classes, and we do a module in 3rd period, and we do it for 2 minutes, and we go as fast as we can, and we all do the same one, and we record their score. Where did they max out? Where did they peak? And then we do the same one in 7th period, and whichever class scored the highest gets a prize. And so that's the only way I really use energy points. I don't use it to single out students, but I do a friendly competition between my 2 classes, usually weekly, to work on those mental math skills and to have some fun and just a change of pace. Because usually we're very meticulous about our math. We're showing our work. We're thinking these things through. We're going relatively slowly. But this is a chance to just go, lights out and go as fast as we can and have some fun with it.
One of the things you just mentioned was kind of cheating or gaming the system. And I'm curious what other experiences you've had with your students focusing on the wrong things, getting points and not on the actual learning, and any techniques that you've discovered that help you manage that other ones than the ones you've mentioned.
Yeah. Yes, students will try to game the system. They're trying to find the path of least resistance. They're trying to make things easier on themselves while in such a way so that they can still earn badges and energy points, but maybe not have to work quite as hard for them. So some of the things my students have done, calculator usage was a problem at the beginning. Students pulling up their dashboard with their calculator on their computer and working some of the more difficult multiplication and division problems that way. One of the ways in class we kind of handled that was to get remote desktop on my computer. So I can see all of my students' computers and see exactly what they're doing. So the minute the dashboard comes up with the calculator, I'm aware of that. We also had to talk about expectations. And so that was definitely an expectation that they would not use calculators unless they get to a more advanced module and it's appropriate to do so. Another thing that we did, I started requiring them to turn in their work on certain modules, so all their scratch work. So that avoided calculator usage because they had to show all their steps anyway. So I would highly recommend teachers using the Khan Academy in their classes to have some type of Khan Academy binder, or even better, a spiral notebook that no pages ever leave. And that way you have a running record of any notes they take from the videos and any work that the kids need to show, and you can collect it periodically and just hold them accountable for that kind of work. So calculators were an issue. Another issue we've run into are students being so interested in energy points that they will do the easiest modules over and over and over and over again. Fortunately, the Khan Academy folks have fixed things, so after you become proficient, those problems are no longer worth very much. And so it drops down to like 25 points a problem or something like that. We also had a problem with students doing, hundreds of the same type of problem, even to get just 25 points. And so they've recorded a max. So after a student reaches this maximum number, they can't really earn any energy points until it's time for a review that way. So the Khan Academy folks have done some things to fix some of those natural cheats. I think another issue that the kids have discovered is they will get 9 in a row right and then purposefully get one wrong, even if it's an easy module, so they can start over and they can keep getting lots and lots of energy points. So that is something, if you're noticing a student keeps getting a 9 streak and then has to start over and a 9 streak and on some module that they should get fairly easily, that's probably a clue that they figured out that they can get a whole lot of energy points with very little work. So that's something to look out for. The Khan Academy developers have added something into the program now where I believe after they've worked so many problems, and even though they aren't proficient yet, but they've gotten the vast majority right, they'll tell them to go work on something else for a while. So I believe that comes up. A couple of my students have run into that, so that's really good. And then the current issue that I'm having with a few students is they are running into age-appropriate modules that are their level, their skill level, but are difficult. And so they're wanting to avoid those. So they are going back and doing easier modules, even if it isn't for very many points. Or they're skipping ahead to calculus-type modules like limits and things like that, and they're just guessing. And so they would rather sit there and guess and be all proud of themselves for getting an answer right, even though they don't know what they're doing, rather than actually learning the math that's appropriate. So they're either going too easy or too difficult. And so the focus graph comes in handy there, where at the end of the week, you can visit with your students and look at their focus graph. And if they have a lot of addition 1 on there, that's inappropriate. And you can talk to them about that. Or if they have a lot of limits or derivatives or things like that on there, that's inappropriate too. And so you can target where they should be working. One of the things that I do each week that's helpful with that is we create goals, and I approve their individual goals. And I also do some guided things, like today we were working with exponents, and we've been working with scientific notation this week. And so I direct them towards some modules, and I approve their personal goals. So they know, usually on Fridays, we look at their focus graph, and we can tell, were you working appropriately this week, or were you wasting your time?
That's a great segue. Kind of continue the discussion around the weekly one-on-ones with the focus graph, and also goal setting, I guess. Maybe let's start with the goal setting process. You know, how do you do that? How often do you do that? And then move into the review, where I guess you check on the progress of the goals.
Okay, so goal setting it's kind of evolved in my classroom to where that's something we usually do at the beginning of the week, normally on Mondays. And the students will select a goal for themselves for the week. Early on, we did like 2 or 3 goals because they were moving through the modules quickly. Now that they're on to more difficult things, I think 1 goal is appropriate in addition to all the other things that we do in math each week. So they select a goal, and I tell my students that their goal needs to be something that's highlighted in green by the Khan Academy program. So if the module's showing up green, that's recommended by the software, that is appropriate. And so a lot of them will have choices. They'll have 3 or 4 or 10 choices depending on where they are. And I'm okay with them working on any of those choices as long as the Khan Academy is recommending it for them. And so the students will select one, and I'll come around and I'll just ask them what it is. They'll show it to me on their dashboard. I'll jot it down, and that's what they're working on all week.